Every Wednesday morning at this time, we check in with the Blacklock's reporter, which is the only reporter-owned and operated newsroom covering our nation's capital with neither politics nor punditry. Tom Korski is the managing editor there, joins us for these conversations. Tom, good morning.
Morning, Mike.
Has Canada's chief archivist gotten into the business of whitewashing our nation's history?
It's not a good look, is it, if you're in the archives or history business? This is, the chief archivist is a lady by the name of Leslie Weir, used to be a librarian at the University of Ottawa, and she got this job. Pays six figures. Oh, more than that, $243,000 a year. That's a living. And she's also a member of the Historic Sites and Monuments Board. We see through access to information, the board has been busy, not celebrating Canadian history, but reviewing more than 2,000 historic designations that go back more than a century to reassess, let's call it historical revisionism, but reassess historical designations of yesteryear from the lens of racism, colonialism, and patriarchy. But Archivist Weir went further. On the basis of a single complaint, this is on the level, a single complaint from, of all people, a Toronto Star reporter, Jacques Gallant, God bless him. He's not a historian, but he had pull. She ordered staff to go through thousands of web pages at the Library and Archives Canada website, over 7,000 pages. She said, I want to remove all the offending comment. I feel very strongly about that, quote, end of quote, she wrote in a staff email. This is urgent. This is an enormous undertaking with over 7,000 web pages. Staff are saying, we see this through staff emails. Staff are saying, what offensive? Like, where do you start? What do we have a definition? Asked one staff member. You know, we're coming to the end of this witch burning episode that everyone went through, this crazy time, but it hasn't burned itself out quite yet, Mike. And when you look back at this, it's stupefying.
You read my mind, Tom. I thought we had reached the end of this, and you talked earlier, you made reference to a revisionist history of sorts here. What we have is a group of people that perhaps were once celebrated, suddenly through the lens of one chief archivist, now becoming villains. And
this Historic Sites and Monuments Board, which has other cabinet appointees, some of them have legitimate street cred they have professional historians, and some of them are, frankly, political appointees. I'll give you an example. When I went to school many years ago, Northwest Mounted Police, oh my heavens, Sam Steele, Fort Steele out in British Columbia and the Revelstoke country, and the Northwest Mounted Police weren't they something? They became a national symbol. How many countries in the world had a police officer as a national symbol? This is the forerunner of the RCMP. Mike, you know this. They saved the prairies from American annexation, drove the scoundrels, American whiskey traders from Montana, drove them away, saved the plains, created beautiful cities and industrial society. Isn't that something? No, apparently they were paramilitary colonialists insensitive to indigenous political structures and social norms, end of quote. Where does it stop? I had a friend, Mike. He was from Serbia, grew up in Belgrade. He said, I'm familiar with this. They renamed my street 4 times based on political norms. The last time they turned it into Haile Selassie Boulevard. That's where we are.
That is where we are. Okay, we don't have to go as far back in history, and I'm sure, Tom, many will remember about a year ago, the 2 men in the Toronto area arrested, accused of plotting a serious and violent attack on the nation. Blacklock has learned that the security screening on these 2 Egyptian nationals may not have been up to snuff?
Spectacular failure. The charges, you're exactly right, it's almost exactly a year ago. In Toronto, they were picked up at a motel room in Richmond Hill. The charges are unbelievable: terrorism, conspiracy to murder, possession of a weapon for dangerous purpose, aggravated assault, on and on and on. They remain in custody. Parliament was assured by the immigration minister in the day and other members of cabinet. Everything was done. How could we have known? Mike, one of these characters landed citizenship. He wound up becoming a citizen weeks before he was picked up. We now see through Department of Immigration records, security screening note, they called it. Nobody referred these applications for a work permit to the Canadian Security Intelligence Service or the Customs Department, Canada Border Services Agency, for comprehensive security screening. End of quote. There was no background check. Mike, one of these guys had appeared in an ISIS torture video from 2015. They didn't even check.
Should not have been difficult to ferret this out, Tom.
Others figured it out. Security services in the United States tipped them off. There were security services in France that said to Canada, hey, do you know you got this dude who's living in Scarborough? He appeared in this torture video. We can't even describe it on the radio. There were MPs who hesitated to read a description of the video into the parliamentary record. It's that violent and depraved, and they didn't even check.
Tom, you and I like to follow the money in these weekly conversations, and if we follow the money into our federal prison system, we find it one of the costliest systems in the world now?
Says the correctional investigator, and he's a friend of the prisoners. Their costs, the correctional services, their costs are up to $436 a day, $436 a day average for a penitentiary inmate. The average in a women's prison is $779 a day. And you say, how is that possible? They're not having steaks and fresh-cut flowers in prison. You know what it is? Fixed costs. There are thousands of empty prison cells, believe it or not. There is no prison overcrowding in the federal system. They figure about 3,000 empty cells. And you might ask, well, why doesn't the prison commissioner cut his costs? And that would be called a rhetorical question.
I'm sure a few folks could find some places for those 3,000 or people to fill those 3,000 empty cells too, Tom.
They have tried. The Border Services Agency said, I have an idea. Why don't we house dangerous illegal immigrants awaiting deportation in these empty cells? It seems like a normal thing to do. And that might save some money. No, it cost more money. It cost an extra $16 million a year. You know why? They had to make it, their words, not mine, compassionate detention conditions, including daily access to doctors, nurses, and psychologists. For anyone who doesn't have daily access to a doctor or a nurse, that's how much it costs.
As always, Tom, appreciate the work you do and the time you give us on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mike.
Tom Korski, managing editor of the Blacklock's Reporter, the only reporter-owned and operated newsroom covering the capital without politics or punditry. It is a subscription-based platform that I strongly recommend. Blacklocks.ca. You can get what you hear about with Tom each and every Wednesday morning, and then some at blacklocks.ca. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.